Hey everyone, welcome to Hub and Spoke, a storytelling platform produced by the Hurt Hub for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Davidson College. I'm your host, Liz Smith Brigham, Davidson class of 2004, and director at the Hurt Hub at Davidson. Every other week, we'll feature Davidson alumni and other members of our community who've started their own businesses, who are investing in innovation, and who are at the leading edge of solving the world's most pressing challenges. Through these conversations, we hope to inspire and connect the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs leading lives of leadership and service. Hey everyone, welcome to Hub and Spoke, today featuring Jill Marcus, Davidson class of 1986. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you for having me.
If you have any questions for Jill after this conversation, you can get in touch with her via email at jill@somethingclassic.com. So let's jump in and welcome an award-winning restaurateur, gardener extraordinaire, and world explorer, Jill Marcus, Davidson class of 1986, and the founder of Mother Earth Group and Something Classic. I'm going to give a little bit of context before we jump into our conversations and welcome Jill officially. So as a political science major and national championship tennis player at Davidson, the food business was an unlikely path for Jill Marcus. Her journey leading to Something Classic Catering began by cooking for her friends out of their homes with her business partner, Karen Teeter. Now, Something Classic is a strong catering powerhouse specializing in events large and small, from grand galas to small house parties. Jill's love for food and entertaining, alongside her impactful community partnerships, has allowed her small business to grow organically. Recent noteworthy events include the royal family of Dubai at the World Equestrian Games, in Tryon, North Carolina, and Nike's Air Jordan Museum during the NBA playoffs. Jill is also the visionary behind the Mother Earth Group, planting seeds for the last 30 years in the Charlotte area. The Mother Earth Group's core encompasses creating an environment that nurtures one another, our community, and the earth. Their green action program, the Green Goddess Alliance, was launched as a local and national award-winning initiative to align with Mother Earth by incorporating green practices into our daily work and lives by composting, recycling, using local farms, providing hormone-free meats, replacing our electricity usage with wind power, and educating our staff, clients, and vendors as well. The opening reception for the 2014 Democratic National Convention for over 15,000 guests was hosted by Something Classic and was Charlotte's largest fully composted event on record. Welcome, Jill, again.
Thank you.
Great. As we get into it, the first thing that I would love to start, and we start off all of these conversations, is really walking us through your entrepreneurial journey from Davidson to today. So just set the stage for us, if you would.
So, when I left Davidson, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And surprising, I didn't really want to be an attorney. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't take the normal path, right? I had traveled a lot during my junior year abroad, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started business school at night, had a couple of part-time jobs, and very, very soon I just started Something Classic out of my house with my partner, very illegally. And that's how we started, just cooking for friends, and kind of launched from there. So it was sort of an unknowing, start. So that there wasn't a lot of, planning that went into that. We just started. Let's do it.
Great. And, from there, could you talk a little bit more about, as you learned by doing out of your house, you were hosting these different parties, doing these different things. Did you start to see some, issues or problems or opportunities that you really capitalized on? Or can you speak about how, you formalized into Something Classic and being more of a restaurateur in Charlotte?
Yeah, now I knew what I was doing then, right? I can look back and say that I was really trying to take my travels and put a story on a plate. I didn't know I was doing that back when I was 22, but that's what I was doing. I just wanted to share, my culinary expenses, and my experiences and travel with my friends. And, soon, those people became my friends. And then I got, started entertaining more people, and then it just kind of spread. So I think that, I just had so much joy and just did a good job of everything that we did initially, that just kind of grew organically. Let me just say that.
Great. And I'm curious too, you mentioned about your travels, and one of the core things I think that is a differentiator for Davidson in particular is how many students study abroad. And could you speak a little bit about your study abroad experience and how that might have influenced you down the road?
Yeah, I think I thought I was going to be a French major, but didn't quite do that. I did not qualify for the Davidson program because my French wasn't good enough to go on the Davidson program. So I found another program, and there were 3 of us from Davidson that went. So we did not go to Montpellier, and that was actually probably a great thing that we didn't do that. The students in Montpellier, they relied on one another, and by going outside the program, we had to make, more friends, and we had to make more connections with other people. So I would say that was a good thing that happened. Probably our program wasn't as formal or as difficult as the Davidson program was, which allowed us to kind of travel more, months at a time from school. I think there was a time I got lost in Greece and got stuck in Turkey and called our school and said, "Hey, we're sick and we're going to stay longer." But just the travel part, I just hadn't been exposed to so many different cultures and people. It was kind of traveling on the cheap, so to say, when you were a student. And so we would go into people's homes and kind of eat off the street and really kind of experience the culture as if we lived there, because we were just taking our time. We didn't know where we were going to go next, and just kind of wandering through Europe, which was super fun, and trying all kind of new culinary things that I had never experienced before. My family didn't go out to eat very much, and I remember when I was at Davidson, that was the first time that you didn't even know like which fork to eat with. When I went to my first formal, I had no idea what I was supposed to do, but I learned the European way just from experience. And so I did learn French. It took me a couple months. That was pretty easy, but I learned what real food was. I learned, I worked in some farms. I literally kind of got my hands dirty and would go back and cook with people's kitchens and learned that way. So I didn't learn any of my culinary schools through school, but sort of did the back way, right? And it was probably the most impactful thing of my whole Davidson career.
That's incredible. I'm wondering too, can you tie that thread? So all of these things that now, I think Airbnb has come in and said, oh, we should have all these hosting experiences, our local culture and sort of immersion of that. You obviously sort of did yourself. Can you tie that to some of, how you have built something classic and even into maybe the Mother Earth group a little bit, or concepts for restaurants that you have today?
Right. And it all, and I've continued to travel. So I've had the opportunity to travel a lot more and make that part of my work thing, so I need to be on the cusp of what's going on in the food scene around the world. And I love just to bring back stories and dishes. And so if somebody's having an event or an opening at the Mint Museum for a particular art exhibit, like I go back and I remember, or I'll think about those travels, and I'll bring that back to an event, from everywhere from the music to the way it looked to the different props. And then the food's very authentic, right? Or if it's not particularly authentic, I'll take those ingredients that are native to that particular country or that particular culture, and then bring them back and kind of put them on a plate, to say. So I'm able, I think people trust me to be able to make them look good, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
so if they're throwing an event that's very culturally astute, right? I'm going to make
Mhm.
them look good. So people, I've built relationships where people rely on me to bring that to them. So I'm bringing my travels to their table and to their guest, and it's really sharing. At the end of the day, we're sharing food and sharing an experience.
Yeah, that's great. Could you talk a little bit about just more deeply, I guess, about all the different businesses that you've run and how you bring these experiences, or how you have brought these experiences into Charlotte? And in particular, maybe we'll get into partnerships in a moment, but I think it would be good just to give everybody a little bit more context for the scope of your businesses.
All right. So, I think I have ADD because I do have a lot of different things going on. One thing you didn't mention, we also have about 80 products in the local Harris Teeter grocery stores here. And so we're in 5 Harris Teeters now and about to expand to 11 more. But I think that our products that we bring are they're like something you would cook at home or something that I would bring from another country, right? They're not like something you would normally pick up in a grocery store. So everything that we do is fairly unique and has a twist on it. So it's classic with a twist. Um, we've opened many restaurants, and they all sort of have the Mother Earth group. Um, core value is that we're going to use very fresh and local products as much as we can. So that has tied into our restaurants. During the pandemic, we created a victory garden. It's our Mother Earth garden. And it's on about an acre. And so we're now, instead of using farms, we're actually the farmer. So we're growing our own food. That is in one respect, we're doing that. And right now I'm rebranding our restaurant from the Uptown, it's in the Mint Museum Uptown. And we're bringing different plates from cultures from all over the world to that particular concept. So always reworking, always, I'm never satisfied with where we are now. I keep striving for something more, or we can do better, or we can be, bring a little bit more excitement to the table. Um, that's fun.
No, that's great. And you mentioned this, and I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday in preparation, and our shared affinity for Alice Waters and the slow food movement. And you just reminded me when you were saying, oh, you're becoming your own farmer. So maybe, I think you have a wonderful reputation for being a pioneer in this space, in particular in sort of sustainable practices. Could you speak a little bit more about just all that ethos, how you were influenced perhaps by others, but ultimately how you really have been a leader in this space in Charlotte and beyond?
Yeah, Alice is very, she believes that whatever's on the plate has to be like organic, and you're really relying on the flavor of that carrot, right? Or whatever it is that you're serving. That's the most important thing. That's the most important ingredient. Not relying on the sauces and everything else. It's very simple, and she's a purist when it comes to that. She's been sort of my icon, somebody that I look up to, with her edible schoolyard, and just bringing local farmers to restaurants. I got the opportunity to work with her on an event in back during the Democratic National Convention, and when I first spoke to her, I was really nervous, because she has like front people. So they've set up the first call, and I was supposed to talk about what menu it was. And when she got on the phone, she was very quiet, very intentional. And I didn't know whether to call her Alice or Miss Waters. So that was, for me, that was kind of like, oh my God, like, and now I'm gonna present a menu to this woman, and she's gonna either say, yes, this is what we're gonna do, or no, what we're gonna do. And it was interesting. I did call her Alice, by the way, and she just made a few suggestions here and there, but she wanted to know what farm those eggplants were coming from. That was her sole purpose. It was very much on the simplicity and the purity of what we were serving. So That's what I got from her.
Yeah, that's good. And since you mentioned it, the Democratic National Convention, I know that that seemed to be sort of the watershed moment in some of bringing, and you talked about, a little bit about Al Gore's book and other things. So could you kind of just tell more of that story, especially like getting into more of the details and the process and how it came to be that you were really leading the charge for the most, was it the most compostable event sort of ever? Uh, and then, what has that led to in your businesses as a result?
Right. So that was over 10 years ago, when we started the Green Goddess Align, you know, and we were really aligning with Mother Earth is kind of what we said at the time. I had been diagnosed with breast cancer, so I had a little bit of time to kind of step away from my business and kind of think about what was important. And I thought, I really wanted to do something bigger than myself here. What was I was throwing parties for a living, like, the importance of that was kind of minor. And then I thought, well, what can I do? I think Al Gore had just come out with his book about the environment, and I was looking at that, and I thought, well, how can I take my business and make it super green? Like, so we went through every step of what I could do in the business and change. What could we change to make a difference? And the most important thing is that we were making the step, and that we were educating other people and telling them it's okay to do this and that you should do this, right? I remember when I came and I had my whole plan laid out, and I went to the office, and everybody looked at me and they said, "Are you crazy?" Like, yes, I am, but this is what we're going to do. And it really didn't take us more than a couple of months, and started changing our practices and started educating people. And yeah, it's kind of how we operate today. And I hope that has been the impudence for, for other people and other businesses to use that as a standard and say, they're doing it, we need to do it too. And so that I think it's pushed other restaurants and other businesses to even think about composting. But, there's just very small things. But, I think it makes a big difference. But it's who we are.
Right. No, that's great. And have you, in that realm too, have you offered, consulting to other businesses, or have you found some who come to you to say, how did you do this? And can you help?
I find myself in interesting conversations. At some point, there's a lot of people out there that make a business of that, that contact you about that, and that they want all kind of certifications and this, that, and the other. It's just like, no, we just kind of want to do best practices here. We want to influence other people, but it has brought about a lot of other conversations. There was a recession during that time. I think that if it hadn't been for our Green Goddess Alliance during the 2009, we probably wouldn't be here now, because everybody that had to do with anything green with the city or architects or anybody where that was important, they were using us as their caterer. Right, because those are important choices. People make their buying choices based on that, and we just happen to do it organically, right? And they loved it, right? So we kept doing it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, because I think sometimes people have this thought in their mind that doing good sometimes is not in congruence with good business practices, or there's one or the other, or it's, well, this needs to be a nonprofit versus a for-profit. So maybe, in those instances, it sounds like these decisions were what kept you alive. So I'm curious.
It did. But, we didn't know that at the time. That I don't think that you can purposefully say, well, we're gonna get this business because we're doing that. That's the wrong approach. You just have to believe in it, right, and know that that's the right thing to do, and then the other people will see that and say, we feel that way too. We're like-minded. We care about our earth. We care about the environment, and then educating other people about it. You'd be surprised the alliances that we've made just by that conversation, just by having those conversations. I think I was talking to the president of Discovery Place about it because they wanted to get their program, launched at Discovery Place. And, within a month, we had a cafe at the Discovery Place. Good things happen from conversations. I might not have ever had that conversation with them about that.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating to elaborate on a little bit more, because you have had interesting partnerships that you told me about, along this journey, while you've maintained ownership over your business, but at the same time have forged these really fortuitous partnerships. So can you speak a little bit more about all the different partnerships that you have in the area and sort of how those came about, and then what was important to you in entering those partnerships?
Right. So I think that part of that conversation was about funding. In my business, to start a kitchen, it's expensive. Back when I was 22, I think it was $14,000, and we spent on a kitchen. Restaurant that I'm building now looks like it's going to be $1.5 million. Big disparity. I don't really have that money sitting around, and most people don't that want to start, a new business. They don't have that fund, and so some of my conversations and growth has been on working with bigger companies or Discovery Place or the Mint Museum, and figuring out a way that we're going to be a value-added service to them, so that they in turn they would fund our project, right? Because it's a mutually beneficial partnership. It's not like a formal partnership, but it is a partnership. And I have learned to look at business relationships and customers as partners, because at the end of the day, if we have the same mutual benefits, then they're more willing to work with you and or fund some of the things that they need. A museum needs a kit, they need a restaurant in their space, or they'll need a caterer to take care of them in their space. That's how we have self-funded without giving up ownership. I love what I do every day, and some of that has to do with the freedom of not having a boss. I'm the day that I did work for a bank, by the way, for a short period of time. I am not a good employee. When you know you're not a good employee, you might want to think about working for yourself, right? And so I love the freedom that comes with dreaming and making those things happen, right? If I can see it, I can do it. And just, to have somebody else have part ownership in that means they also have opinions. If they have a money stake, they have decisions. They make those decisions for you, and then you're carrying out those decisions. For me, I feel like whatever happens, I'm successful because every day I wake up and I do what I want to do, and I follow my dream. And that, no amount of money that anybody can pay you can replace that. So it's probably why we haven't grown more with different partnerships. So that does have a lot of meaning to me, to be able to do what I do.
I really love this point, because we have a number of students and other entrepreneurs who are here with us today, or maybe watching on this recording, who have to make that decision and self-reflection point of, do I go the venture capital route? Do I go get a loan? Do I get, friends and family money? What advice would you have for them? Like, what questions do you ask yourself of that trade-off of precipitous growth maybe, or getting to market faster versus control? Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, you have your whole life, right? And I guess it depends on what your goals are in your life. For me, I've had a family, I've had kids during, this. And so it's been important to me to be able to control my destiny, control my time, control my ability to go watch my kids play soccer. I think that nobody's really offered that much venture capital. If you get a venture capitalist and they want to give you a lot of money, it means you may be more important to you to carry out that dream but just understand that that dream may not be your dream at the end of the day. You may end up carrying out somebody else's dream. It may start out the way you want it. But anything that you can get funds from, like, if you're a Davidson student, I highly encourage you to apply for the Avenger grant when that becomes available again, because that is free money for great ideas, and they give you advice and they guide you, and the Hurt Hub is there to guide you. And anytime you can get a grant or somebody to help you, that you're not giving up a percentage of the business or a portion of the business or those decision making, go with that. Sometimes you may not have a choice. I either have to do this or not, but try to keep as much control as you can. Unless you don't have confidence in yourself and you don't think you can do it. Maybe you shouldn't be an entrepreneur to start with, but
But
you gotta believe in yourself.
Right. Yes. No, the self-reflection, I think, is a really interesting point. And thank you for the nice plug for the Hurt Hub as well. We do offer students even everything from, micro grants of up to $1,000. And then the Avenger Impact Fund too is up to $10,000 of, grants. And to your point, a lot of mentorship and other opportunities. So I think that's a good point.
I've actually, in some, I feel like I'm starting a new venture like almost every year. I come up with something. I've actually looked at the Hurt Hub and thought, gee, maybe I should do that seminar.
Yes, come join us. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious too, we're almost coming up to the open Q&A period, so I'll give a little bit of a shout, just a reminder to everybody, the chat should be open. Send your questions to Kelly Weaver, who's our co-host, as I mentioned before, so we can get to those in just a moment. But as we're kind of closing out of our formal conversation, do you have any sort of words of advice, for Davidson students, particularly who are interested in the food or food service space or restaurant space, if they have this amazing idea, where to get started, things to read, things to watch?
Let me tell you how I make things happen. First of all, I write it down. I write down what I want to see. Right. So it's interesting. I can go back 30 years ago and kind of see where my dreams were, but I write it down and then I speak it to the universe. I know that sounds kind of like woo woo, but then I start talking to other people, right? I start making that become alive, whatever that thing is that I want to do. It comes alive when you start speaking it. It becomes a life of its own. So just write it down and speak it to your friends. Start talking about it. Start talking about it like it's going to happen. Then you start making little baby steps. Do one thing today. Maybe next week you're going to do another thing. And before you know it, you've got a business.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we will switch over into some of the other questions that either came ahead of time or were coming in the door here. So again, anybody that, if you have a burning question, drop it into the chat. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about a liberal arts education like the caliber of Davidson. How can that help us maybe redefine what it means to be an entrepreneur and innovator? Because I think we have a lot of media hype around the sort of Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and the tech space. But how do you think we can more closely align Davidson liberal arts education with driving entrepreneurship?
Well, from when I was at Davidson in the 80s to where Davidson is now, the students now are super lucky because of all the things the programs that you have there that help you do this, and the staff and the Hurt Hub. And I think there's even a staff member that's part of Davidson that kind of helps do that. When I was at Davidson, I was the 10th graduating class of women. I can't tell you how many people said, oh, you're going to Davidson, you're going to find a good husband. Seriously. People that went to Davidson, when I was there, it seemed very enclosed, and that there wasn't that much opportunity in the mind space that you could do what you wanted. And you really had to think outside of being a doctor or a lawyer or going into a regular career. You had to really kind of be strong, a strong advocate of yourself and really believe in yourself. And for Davidson, I think it's important that we read a lot, right? I learned how to write, so that was above and beyond. If you can write when you get out of school, you're like 98% ahead of everybody else that's out there in the world, because nobody can write. It's amazing to me. Nobody can do math and nobody can write in my industry. Let me just say that. And just believing in yourself. Davidson had such a great. They had so many other programs of speakers and things that we almost didn't have time to participate in because we were reading 300 pages a night. If those things, like the art classes that are there, the philosophy classes are there, those make you a better rounded well-rounded student per se. All of those other things, and maybe not the technical things, make somebody well-rounded enough to be an entrepreneur. Because in my everyday life, I probably wear 12 different hats. I'm a psychologist, I'm a marketer, I have to know accounting, I have to know, how to talk to people, I have to know how to talk to different levels of people, right? From everybody from a dishwasher to seriously the Prince of Dubai, right? And so you have to know, you have to have a well-rounded education, not just be a technical education. So I think Davidson in that respect is so unique that you just get, crazy random things that you learn that don't really matter, but they do. They really do.
No, I think that's really well said, and it reminds me too of another question that we didn't get a chance to ask yet. Is really about how do you think about hiring teams and leading the team? You alluded to a little bit with Green Goddess Alliance and sort of training and reshaping people's minds and your operations. Could you speak a little bit about how you hire and build a team?
So I probably hire more on people, right? Less on skill, because I can teach anything. So I really look for people that are like-minded, that have ADD like me, right? That believe in what we're doing, and they care, right? So that's what I look when I pull a team together. Our whole organization is a team. So we don't have a formal team like they might have at Google, that this team works on this project. We're a team together. I'm definitely a team-oriented person. My dad was a football coach. I played tennis. I'm a very team-oriented, but our whole group is a team. And if one of us messes up, it's the whole team's responsibility at that point. Did that answer that?
Yes, it does. Yes. Sorry, I took a minute to unmute myself. No, I think that's helpful. And one thing that you mentioned too is this, that you're hiring people and sort of the empathy that goes along with that. In many of these conversations on Hub and Spoke, we've heard that as a theme that has come out of, well, I can hire good people who know how to write, who can, think critically, or who are passionate about what we're doing, and then teach them the skills as they go along. And so I think that's a really good thread to kind of tease out. One question that we did get is just around the pandemic and how, your business has changed with everything that's come with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. It's been devastating. All of what we've had 3 locations close overnight uptown, and even still our uptown business, everything's closed. Uptown is closed. We're ready for people to come back to work, but it has forced us to transform who we are. So we've had time, and that has been a gift above everything. So I always look for, what can we get good from this? Or, we can list all the bad, but what's good that has come from this is the gift of time. To sit back and say, what are we doing in normal times that's good, and what can we leave, right? We were working prior to the pandemic, we were working crazy hours, every weekend, every holiday. It was almost too much. And I think this has afforded us the opportunity to kind of say, what's really important to us? Who is really our customer base? Not everybody that calls us, we try to help them, whether that's good for us or not. So we've done a lot of that. It's forced us to go online and be more technical. So we offer almost all of our products now online, which we wouldn't never have done before. So that's been unique, and it's something that we'll keep even after. And is there a post-pandemic? I don't know. One of our restaurants, the one in the Mint Museum, we've been there for 10 years. Kind of helped, and we've decided to close that restaurant. Actually, we've been successful there. Halcyon has been, I think, a success. We were nominated for James Beard Award, and we have loved that restaurant. Now we're transforming it. We kind of looked and said, hey, what do we need to do in the future? How are people going to eat? How are they going to entertain? And so we're creating something transformational that might have to do with cocoons and butterflies. So we're not announcing the name yet, but it's, the namesake of it's going to be transformational for sure.
Which seems appropriate with everything.
It is.
And I'm wondering too, kind of in that realm, when you're switching to these different distribution channels, and you talked about Harris Teeter at the beginning, could you speak maybe to how you prioritize or divide your time and think about all these various revenue or distribution streams?
Oh gosh. It's exhausting just to think about them. I almost pick whole days where this is what I'm doing today. Today I'm at the Moorhead Inn. This is one of our venues. Next week I'm gonna, one day will just be a Harris Teeter day, or maybe one day it'll just be a catering day. I do have managers at each of those things, but I like to get involved. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to cook still, although they don't let me in the kitchen much. But it is like having ADD. You kind of do, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But you have all these things you want to do, and you kind of get people moving in that direction. But then you got to jump in and see where they really are. And I think that takes a personal touch. I don't want my business to be one that is very cookie cutter. I want our business or whichever restaurant it is to look like it's an independent restaurant. It's not an Applebee's.
Right. Yeah. Right. That change. Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting point too. And how do you, relative to that, you said, when you're hiring, you really want to get people who believe in the mission and all that. Obviously, there's a sort of overview of, I want all of these businesses and restaurants to stand alone and feel like an independent place. But yet, how do you also hire for those individuals to know the Moorhead Inn is different from what Halcyon was, and because you seem to have multiple missions almost in those concepts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
How do I get them to do what?
No. Oh, I was just thinking about, that might be difficult if you have somebody who is definitely bought into the mission overall, and maybe even thinking about continuing to give them different opportunities and satiate that same part of what you have too, of interest in all these different things, just like building the talent over time, I guess.
Yeah. And I have people that have been with us for 20 years. And our general manager that has been with us for a very long time, she's worked in one of our cafes. She's managed a restaurant. She left and worked for another company and then came back. I have people that like what we do. They like the atmosphere. They like the family, the nurturing, I guess. We're women, so we're very nurturing. I do have a lot of women that work for us. And it's, you want those people that understand what you're looking for. They understand presentation. They understand, it's not going to look like a hotel. And when you find those people, we kind of stick together. We like each other, actually. We like spending time together.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
even spend time with each other outside of work, which is amazing.
no, that's great. Yeah, it's a true kind of family feel. It sounds like that you've cultivated over time.
Mhm.
Had a question come in through the chat. So this is kind of a little bit of a pivot, but is there a meal from your travels that inspires a dish that you still make today?
Uh, um, Gee, there is a dish and nobody orders it very often, and I think it's kind of fun. I used to live in Italy for a couple of years, in Bologna, and they made a dish there with orecchiette, and broccoli rabe and sausage, and I think it's just delicious. So it shows up on our menus here and there. It's one of my favorites, although not everybody orders it. It's a little strange, but our dishes show up everywhere. In the new restaurant, we'll have tagines from a lot of my travels in Morocco. I love Moroccan food. You'll see, and I love Peruvian food right now. That's one thing that you'll start seeing a little bit more thing coming up. Very, very current in the culinary world too.
Yeah, that's great. And this is going back to questions specifically about Davidson. So we have a mixed bag that comes in from the Q&A, but mostly about were there, with poli-sci. You mentioned a little bit about you thought you were going to be a French major and then you switched to political science. Could you talk a little bit about maybe some of that decision and potentially, courses or other things you took at Davidson that also influenced you?
I think in political science, you learn about, the worldview. You learn about different countries, and their politics does kind of have a lot to do with culture. So, to me, that at Davidson, that was where you kind of could explore different cultures. I took a lot of classes in African political systems. I found that fascinating. Just they keep changing, and some of them you couldn't even keep up with because they changed so much. I think one of my professors, I've had a couple interesting poli-sci professors, was Jack Perry, who had a lot of insight into Russian politics. But we had another professor, I think his name was Ernie Diggs, and he was here on exile from Liberia. And I don't think we talked much. I don't even know what the class was, to be honest with you, but just to sit there in class and listen to him talk about all the different, shenanigans that went on in his country, I think he was the education minister at the time. And I don't think he was at Davidson for very long, but I was lucky to have him in class. But that was my draw to politics.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that is more common than not, where in fact, I came in, same thing, thinking I was political science, and then I took one of Dr. Randy Nelson's classes in English, and I was like, oh, nope, this is the path for me, and this is where this is my home, and go down that way. But I think that speaks to the beauty of the liberal arts, right? It's one day you find something really, really fascinating, and you are at liberty to pursue that, depending on who's teaching it or what have you. So
yeah, we also had a really great class in Buddhism at Davidson, that was very different to the fundamentals of Christianity, which was horrible. It was hard. That was the hardest class I think I've ever had. Something that you should know, but I thought the Buddhist class was fabulous.
Yes, I too took one. It was a little bit broader. It was Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism. And same thing. I remember we read this book called the Tao of Pooh, which is Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
And studying all of the stories of Winnie the Pooh through the lens of Taoism. So
yeah. I actually met a Davidson professor while I was traveling in India, something independently, and they were there on a Fulbright scholar. And he couldn't believe I'd never had his class, but what was I doing traipsing around India, right?
Yeah.
Happened to run into a Davidson professor.
No, that's great. Which, yes, I feel like these moments of serendipity happen. Maybe they're not so serendipitous. We're all put together for purpose. But we did have another question come in, and this is from Tony Dick, who I think is a good friend. He's been my Twitter friend for a long time. We've never met in person, but we've exchanged many things on Twitter.
Yeah.
So he is asking, from an outsider, generally the restaurant or food business looks very challenging economically. So many fail. In the midst of these challenges, what factors have differentiated something classic to keep it thriving?
So I think that if we had just had one restaurant at any time, what has kept us afloat, because the economy keeps doing this, right? Catering dips in the summer and January, February, is that we have a diversity of companies. And that has kept, so where one company might be doing well, another one might not. During the pandemic, we lost all of our catering. Like everything canceled, the restaurants closed, but we had our Harris Teeter things where people were buying products right and left. So I think it really, new restaurants close, and I think in the first year, it's like 90% of new restaurants close. I think I'm in like the 1 percentile of restaurants that are still open after 10 years or 8 years. So it's pretty grim. I will say Banking 101 says, thou shalt not lend to restaurants. So banks have not really helped me out along the way, but the having the diversity of the different companies and the different product lines has kept us, out of the poorhouse there, for sure.
Which is interesting. I think I'm curious when those diverse product lines came about, because as you're thinking about, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I have this idea for a restaurant, I would assume that you're so gung-ho on just that one concept and making that work. Like, how do you?
I think when we first started, we felt this, there were 2 peak times during the year, and then what do you do in the off-peak times? So we had to find something that would be steady during those times. Great thing about a retail product is you're really busy when it rains and when it snows, which is when restaurants are not. But I think, our cafe and discovery place was really busy in the summer. Catering's not very busy in the summer. So it's having that positive cash flow consistently throughout the year in various forms has been very helpful to us, especially when you're trying to keep a staff fully employed, right? If you want good people, you can't just pay them when you have events part-time, or else you're going to have crappy staff. You have to have a longevity, right? And so you have to have something for them to do throughout the year.
And with the especially in the grocery space, I'm fascinated by this as well, just kind of extending the question a little bit. How do you get into Harris Teeter? Where do you start those conversations?
So how did we get into Harris Teeter? So we were many years ago, we had a chicken pot pie that we made that made it onto Food Finds, which was a Food Network show. And the wife of somebody from Harris Teeter had the chicken pot pie and said to his wife, this was in Charlotte, you need to get these people into the store. And literally a man by the name of Wiley Fox, can you believe that? Wiley Fox kind of took me under his arm and helped us. They helped us get packaging. He helped ask the right questions and really did kind of help bring us along. I don't think that happens. I don't know if that's just luck. He liked me. I don't know. I really don't know. But you have to, it's not to get into Harris Teeter. You have to stay in Harris Teeter, which means if you don't sell the product, they will invite you to leave. To this day, I don't have a contract with Harris Teeter. It's just if we sell product. And so you have to have a customer base. I think there are a couple of different ways to go through. Just, there's a couple of different channels, but sometimes it's who you know. I don't.
Yeah.
Who you know.
Yeah. Well, I always say, my mom always said that luck comes to the prepared mind. So,
Yeah.
right, as you're doing your due diligence, and Wiley Fox, what a name. That is,
Yeah. He's a
that
great
is
guy too, by the way.
fabulous.
I remember I was supposed to make a presentation and we didn't have a label. And I was up and I had two really, like, a 1-year-old and, 5-year-old. And I was up till like 5:30 in the morning, and I had an 8 o'clock meeting, and I was supposed to take the product. And I had my little Mac computer at the time. I was at home still, like, creating this label at 5 o'clock in the morning. And my husband said, "What are you doing? Like, this is not that important." I was like, "No, it is. It is that important." So if I didn't do that work then, of course it was last minute. If I didn't do that work then, I wouldn't be there today.
Yeah. I love these little stories and nuggets. And I think because some people, again, see these stories in the media and think it's easy,
No, no,
or,
no, no,
put
no,
in
no.
the hard work.
I've definitely have done that. I don't have to do as much of that anymore. I'm lucky. I have great staff, but yeah, I've done all the work at some point. Wouldn't ask anybody to do something I haven't done myself.
Yes. No, I very much agree with that. So I have one last question for you as we kind of wrap up here and keep to time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, we are cultivating a network here through the Hurt Hub of people who can bring things to the table, people who can share things and give back. And you mentioned some of these mentors along the way. Do you have an ask of us or this community, or maybe a challenge for Davidson students in particular to think about?
With their own businesses, or when they're
Right,
thinking
when
about
they're in
that.
businesses or getting
Yeah,
started.
I think if you start a business now, I think you have to do something that's bigger than yourself, right? Not that you're just going to make product X and sell product X. I think there has to be a social entrepreneur aspect to whatever it is that you're doing. To be a good citizen, to be a good citizen business person. I think that you should be doing that. It makes it more challenging, but in our world, I don't see how you don't do that these days. Well, I do see people that do that these days, but it's not about the almighty dollar. Is not the most important thing. You have to help somebody along the way, and create a product that will lift people up in some way. That would be my ask.
I love that. And I think it does fit with all the students that I see coming through my office hours at the Hurt Hub, or the students who have just applied for the venture fund here at Davidson. They all are thinking in that way, but it's such a good reminder to push and say, you were a pioneer in sustainability because it was the right thing to do. And it begetted, all these other relationships and partnerships that have turned into a wonderful business over the last 20, 21 years since you started that. And now it's just
31.
Excuse me, 31. Excuse me, 31. I'm
Crazy.
thinking of the initial, the beginning of that, but 31, yes. That you will find, if you educate people on these practices, and you will find like-minded individuals who ultimately are willing to align to your mission and put forth good in the world.
I mean, those are people you want to do business with anyway. Those are
Right.
people that at the end of the day, you have to pick up the phone and talk to them. You have to go to lunch with them. You have a relationship with your customers, and you want to hang out with people that you like, right? As opposed to people that you don't.
Right. Yeah. We spend a lot of time at work. So
Yes.
it's an important thing to think about, that, as somebody who's just graduating or thinking about their next career move, that you have agency to choose
Sure.
who you want to do business with and who you want to work with. So,
And you should.
and you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this lovely, enlightening and fun discussion today, Jill. It's really been our pleasure to host you here on Hub and Spoke.
Thank
Is
you.
there anything, closing parting words, anything you want to add before we close out?
Visit our new restaurant in the big museum.
Fantastic. Great.
We
Well,
might share our names at some point.
good. When you have more details, we're happy to promote that in our newsletter and
Yeah.
on our social media channels too. I just want to close out by thanking everybody for your questions today and remind everyone to that tell your friends. There will be a recording available in about a week or so up on our website and our social media channels, so stay tuned for that. And then if you are interested in keeping up with what's going on in the Hurt Hub, go to hurthub, all one word, .davidson.edu and Hubbub newsletter, and you can sign up to get the latest from us when we have updates, generally every other week or so, but sometimes more frequently than that. So thank you so much, Jill. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everybody.